Have you ever been surrounded by people yet felt completely alone? It's not the kind of loneliness that comes from emptiness, but the kind that rises quietly, even when the room is full. The music plays softly in the background. Glasses clink. Laughter fills the air like a carefully rehearsed script. Everyone is performing. Everyone knows their role. And yet you stand there, invisible, in plain sight. You listen as your cousin talks about his career, his voice vibrant, his words polished. But you hear what no one else seems to notice: the weariness hiding behind his eyes, the hollow ring behind his rehearsed excitement. You watch your aunt smile brightly as she boasts about her marriage, while her husband sits beside her disconnected, scrolling through his phone as though miles away from the very room he occupies. Their words float like balloons, light, colorful, but empty inside. The conversations skim across the surface, never daring to dive beneath. How are you? How's work? Isn't life wonderful? They ask questions without really listening. They answer without really revealing. And all the while, you feel the undercurrent of everything that remains unsaid. It's not that you don't care. In fact, you care so deeply that it hurts. You feel the tension behind their smiles, the silent burdens they refuse to name. You sense the quiet exhaustion in their hearts as they work so hard to appear fine. You see the desperate need to belong, to impress, to uphold images that feel more like costumes than truth. And there you are, quiet, still, not because you have nothing to say, but because you refuse to contribute to the performance. You ache for something real, for words that carry weight, for honesty that doesn't tremble under the fear of judgment. But instead, you're surrounded by a sea of polished facades where true connection feels like a foreign language no one dares to speak. People glance your way and wonder why you're so distant, why you don't engage more, why you seem detached. They don't see the battle happening inside you, the overwhelming flood of unspoken emotions you absorb from everyone around you. It's like standing in a crowded room while waves crash silently against your chest, one after another, until you're exhausted, not from being alone, but from feeling too much. They call you antisocial. They say you should lighten up. But they don't understand that pretending drains you far more than solitude ever could. You're not distant because you dislike people. You're distant because you feel too deeply. Because small talk feels like swallowing air when your soul craves something nourishing. And so, you sit quietly, observing, absorbing, carrying what others pretend not to feel. The world thinks your silence is emptiness, but you know it's full of truths, unspoken, full of empathy, unacknowledged, full of emotions too heavy for shallow words. You are not broken. You are not cold. You are simply someone who sees beneath the surface, and that is both your burden and your gift. There's something most people never see: the invisible cost of every interaction. The way simple conversations, casual greetings, and friendly small talk gently pull at your energy, like quiet waves eroding the shore. While others leave social events feeling full, you often walk away, emptied, not because you dislike the company, but because each exchange quietly drains you. For some, connection is fuel. They enter a room and light up, feeding on the attention, the laughter, the constant exchange of words. Their energy seems limitless, expanding with every new face they encounter. They float from one conversation to the next, soaking in the liveliness like sunlight. Oh, but you operate differently. Your energy doesn't multiply in the crowd. It depletes. Every conversation is a thread being gently tugged from your core. Each small talk exchange, each shallow smile, each polite chuckle draws from a well inside you that isn't easily refilled. You're not running on external applause or validation. You're sustained by something much quieter, something internal, something that requires stillness to renew. You've felt it many times before. The soft anxiety before walking into a gathering, the careful monitoring of your own energy levels throughout the evening, the silent calculation of how many conversations you can realistically hold before you need to step away to breathe, to recalibrate. And when you finally retreat into solitude, it isn't to escape people, it's to return to yourself. This isn't weakness. It's not social ineptitude. It's not fear. It's simply how your system works. Your mind is like a deep running current, constantly observing, processing, feeling. You don't simply hear words. You hear the tone beneath them. You don't just see faces. You see the subtle tension in a clenched jaw, the flicker of sadness in distracted eyes, the hidden frustration behind forced laughter. And all of this information comes flooding in, moment after moment, person after person. It's as though you're carrying dozens of quiet emotional threads at once, even as you smile and nod along. The world doesn't see the weight you carry. They don't feel how heavy it can become. Sometimes, you wish you could experience the lightness others seem to have, to float on the surface without sinking into the undercurrents, to move from one interaction to the next without carrying fragments of other people's emotions home with you. But that isn't how you're built. You're wired to sense, to absorb, to hold. And so you've learned to be selective, not because you don't care, but because you care too much. You know how precious your energy is. You know how deeply one authentic conversation can nourish you, and how quickly 10 empty ones can drain you. Others may chase quantity, more friends, more parties, more connections, but you instinctively choose quality. A single, meaningful exchange fills you in ways 100 casual conversations never could. You are not antisocial. You are not broken. You are simply tuned to a different frequency, one that values depth over noise, substance over performance, truth over appearance. There's a skill you never asked for, but one you've carried for as long as you can remember, the ability to sense when something isn't real. It's not something you consciously turn on or off. It's simply always there, quietly scanning, gently noticing the space between words, the hesitation behind smiles, the invisible threads that most people miss. You've sat across from people who speak with perfect politeness, whose words are carefully chosen, but whose energy whispers something entirely different. You hear the enthusiasm in their voice, but feel the tension underneath. You listen to compliments that feel hollow encouragement that sounds rehearsed. And though nothing harsh is said, you sense the disconnect as if you're standing before a mirror that reflects only what you want to see, never what truly is. It's not that you're looking for flaws in others. Quite the opposite. You long for sincerity, for the kind of connection that feels steady, unguarded, real. But instead, you often find yourself wading through performances, people playing roles they've rehearsed for years sometimes, without even realizing they're performing. Small talk isn't harmless for you. It feels like being handed empty boxes one after another, pretending they carry something meaningful inside. And the more you're handed, the heavier they become, until you crave to set them all down and walk away from the charade entirely. You watch as people talk, not to connect, but to wait for their turn to speak. You see friendships that exist on borrowed time, held together by convenience, rather than depth. You notice the forced excitement, the exaggerated laughter, the competitive storytelling, where no one listens, only performs. Most won't see what you see. They mistake these social exchanges for bonding for closeness. But you can feel when someone is only present in body, their mind elsewhere, calculating, comparing, protecting their image. You sense when a compliment carries an unspoken agenda, when advice is offered more for control than care, when apologies are delivered more for appearance than genuine remorse. This is your authenticity filter, not a wall, but a quiet sensor that hums beneath your skin, guiding you gently but firmly away from places where your soul won't be fed. You don't engage because you can't pretend not to see. You don't withdraw because you're cold, but because staying means suffocating under layers of unspoken dishonesty. You've learned that sometimes the most exhausting part of social interaction isn't the people themselves. It's the constant work of sifting through what's real and what's performed. It's not cynicism that keeps you distant. It's clarity. You're not looking for perfect people. You're looking for real ones. Those who speak from the heart, even if their words are messy. Those who sit with you in silence without feeling the need to fill it. Those who show up not because it benefits them, but because they simply care. And so you continue to listen quietly, trusting that one genuine voice, one honest exchange, one unguarded moment will always be worth more than 1,000 empty words. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but sacred. A quiet that wraps around you like a familiar embrace, soft and steady. This is the space where you finally breathe freely, where the noise of the world dissolves into the background and the weight of invisible expectations lifts from your shoulders. People often mistake your solitude for loneliness. They assume you retreat because you fear connection or lack confidence. But what they don't understand is that this quiet space is where you come alive. This is where your thoughts can roam unfiltered, where your emotions can settle without interference, where you can finally hear your own heartbeat again. While others find their strength in the crowd, you find yours in the stillness. It's not avoidance, it's renewal. The conversations you didn't engage in, the events you politely declined, the gatherings you left early, they weren't escapes. They were choices. Choices to protect the delicate balance of your inner world. Because here in the sanctuary of your own mind, ideas begin to take root. Here you untangle the thoughts that got knotted during the day. You replay moments, not to obsess, but to understand. You reflect on conversations, not to critique, but to process what was left unsaid, what was truly meant, what you truly felt. And in this solitude, creation begins. The world may never see what happens behind closed doors, but it is here where books are written, art is born, music is composed, and innovations quietly take shape. It's not in the noise of brainstorming sessions or the clamor of crowded rooms that breakthroughs are made. It's here, in this quiet dialogue between you and your own soul. There's a richness inside you that the world's pace rarely allows room for. While others chase constant stimulation, you cultivate depth. While they fill every empty moment with distraction, you find beauty in stillness. You listen for whispers. Most people never notice the gentle nudges of inspiration, the soft pull of intuition, guiding you towards something meaningful. And when you emerge from this sacred space, you carry with you something precious, a clarity others rarely possess, an insight born not from endless chatter, but from careful observation and deep contemplation. You're not running from the world. You're preparing yourself to contribute something real to it. This is your creative sanctuary, not isolation, but incubation. Not disconnection, but alignment. Not emptiness, but overflow. The world will always pressure you to stay busy, to stay visible, to stay engaged. But you know that your best offerings are birthed in the quiet spaces they cannot see. And so, you honor your solitude, not with guilt, but with gratitude. Because here, in the hush of your own company, you are not alone. You are fully present with yourself. The world often celebrates the loudest voices, mistaking volume for leadership. It shines spotlights on those who speak first, who take up space, who dominate conversations. But true leadership doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet presence that carries the greatest weight. You've watched as others scramble for attention, speaking to be heard rather than to offer something meaningful. You've seen decisions made hastily fueled by urgency rather than wisdom. And through it all, you've sat back, observing, listening, waiting, not because you lack opinions, but because you understand that words carry power, and power must be handled with care. When you lead differently. You don't rush to fill silences. You honor them. You don't react impulsively. You reflect deeply. You don't seek validation from the crowd. You trust the steady voice within. And that more than anything makes people listen when you finally choose to speak. Your leadership is not born from performance, but from presence. It's not built on charisma, but on consistency. While others chase popularity, you build trust. While some lead with charm, you lead with clarity. You're not swayed by trends or the shifting tides of public opinion because your compass is anchored within. There's a strength in you that many overlook, the ability to hold space for others without needing to fill it with noise. In your quiet, people feel safe to speak their truth. They sense your sincerity, your focus, your genuine interest in understanding rather than controlling. You've seen how easy it is for groups to fall into groupthink, to follow the loudest person in the room, simply because they demand attention. But you've also seen the damage that kind of leadership leaves behind, decisions made from ego rather than insight, short-term victories that cost long-term trust. Your gift is your patience. You wait for the full picture before acting. You listen not only to words, but to what remains unspoken. You see the undercurrents others miss, the hesitation behind bold statements, the fear behind aggression, the vulnerability behind pride. And because of this, when you choose a path, it's one grounded in thoughtfulness. Your decisions are not reactions to pressure, but responses to principle. You're not paralyzed by doubt, but empowered by deliberation. People may not always notice your leadership at first. You may not command rooms with volume or sweep others off their feet with grand speeches. But in time, they recognize your steady hand, your unwavering integrity, your rare ability to lead without needing to dominate. The world is noisy, the world is fast, but you in your quiet strength offer something increasingly rare, a place of stability, of reason, of depth. And in a world spinning too quickly, that kind of leadership becomes a beacon. You don't need to chase influence. You become influential simply by being fully yourself. The world is drowning in noise. It moves faster every day, chasing trends that expire overnight, celebrating appearances over substance, and rewarding those who shout the loudest even when they have nothing meaningful to say. In that chaos, your quiet nature might feel invisible. But what if your stillness is exactly what this world desperately needs? While others perform for approval, you crave authenticity. While they chase validation, you build truth. While they seek the spotlight, you find richness in the shadows where real things grow. In your quiet presence lies a depth that refuses to be diluted, a stability that doesn't bend to passing winds. The world needs people who pause before reacting, who listen before speaking, who feel before judging. The world needs people who notice what others overlook, the pain behind smiles, the longing beneath confidence, the loneliness hidden in crowded rooms. You are that person. You are the one who sees the contradictions no one else acknowledges, the coworker who jokes too much to hide his exhaustion, the friend who always gives but quietly withers inside, the public figure who appears flawless yet trembles behind the stage curtain. You carry these unseen stories with reverence, honoring them with your empathy rather than exploiting them for conversation. In a culture obsessed with performing, you model what it means to simply be. You remind others that life isn't a stage and our worth isn't measured by applause. You offer permission, silent, powerful permission, for others to exhale, to drop their masks, to be seen as they truly are. You've likely been told your entire life that you need to change, to speak more, to socialize more, to push yourself into spaces that feel unnatural. But all along, your restraint has been your wisdom. Your selectivity has been your discernment. Your solitude has been your sanctuary. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more signal. And you quietly are that signal. You are the one who stays present when others chase distractions. You're the one who chooses depth when others settle for surface. You're the one who creates meaning when others chase moments. You build connections slowly, but they last. You offer presence instead of performance. And in a society starving for something real, that is a rare and powerful gift. You may feel small in a world that celebrates spectacle, but your quiet authenticity ripples farther than you realize. You anchor those around you. You invite them to slow down, to reflect, to come home to themselves. And perhaps, without even knowing it, you are leading a quiet revolution, one that doesn't need banners or noise. A revolution of sincerity, of presence, of truth. You've spent much of your life quietly carrying the unspoken message that something about you needs to change, that your quiet makes others uncomfortable, that your preference for solitude is strange, that your sensitivity is a weakness. And for a long time, you may have wondered if they were right. You may have pushed yourself into noisy rooms, forced laughter into hollow conversations, worn smiles that never reached your eyes, all in the name of fitting in, all in an attempt to meet expectations written by people who never truly saw you. But I need you to hear something now, with more clarity than you've ever heard it before. You were never broken. You were never too quiet, too reserved, too sensitive, too introspective. You were simply different. And that difference was never a flaw. It was your design. You don't need to apologize for needing space. You don't need to justify your selectivity in relationships. You don't owe explanations for why crowds exhaust you or why small talk leaves you empty. You're allowed to choose depth over noise, solitude, over spectacle, sincerity, over performance. The world may not always understand your rhythm, They may misinterpret your silence as disinterest. But those who matter, the ones who truly see, will recognize your stillness for what it is: presence, attention, care, depth. Because you don't just hear people, you feel them. You don't just meet people, you hold space for them. You don't just exist, you observe, absorb, and quietly carry what others overlook. You're not here to entertain the masses. You're here to offer something rare: authenticity in a world that has nearly forgotten what it feels like. And as you release the pressure to become something you're not, you'll feel it. The quiet power that has always lived inside you. The strength that comes from knowing yourself deeply. The peace that arrives when you stop performing and start simply being. You don't need louder words. You need softer courage. The courage to stay still in a moving world. The courage to honor your nature even when others misunderstand it. The courage to lead with depth in a culture that worships surface. The revolution you carry isn't one of rebellion, but of quiet return. A return to self, to truth, to presence. And as you walk this path, you give silent permission for others to do the same. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse for those still lost in performance. Your quiet presence reminds them that they too can come home to themselves. So, no, you are not antisocial. You are not cold. You are not broken. You are simply done with pretending. And that is your superpower.